Welcome back, folks, to the next episode of our carbon fiber adventure. Last week we did these side panels, which didn't turn out the most fabulous, but this week we are going to do the front panel, which is going to require some vacuum bagging, and towards the end we might actually even fix these. Might put another coat on just to make them look pretty and more consistent. But I'm going to go ahead and get this front panel off, disassembled, and we're going to go to the next step. Alright, we're back with the front panel taken apart. Pretty much it was just this screen and some filter material. This is the part that we're going to be wrapping in carbon fiber. A neat little thing right here, if you can see it. See right here, there's this little part here. Right here on this, they got this thing. That's to make room for, you can see right here, it's kind of like pressed through, so that way this logo can fit. I'm actually going to take this logo off, and I'm going to put it on here at some point. So when we start putting our layers of resin on there, that's actually going to get embedded into this, and it's going to look super cool. Now, in addition to all the materials that we're going to need from what we used in the last video, and your carbon fiber itself, we're going to need a vacuum bag. What I'm using are these. They are for, like, say it's summertime, you can pack your wintertime clothes into this. Then you use this pump that comes with it. It goes here, you pull it down into a vacuum, it squishes everything together, and you can pack those clothes away until the next season. They work just fine for this. Alternatively, you could go and get, all your expensive, like this. This is actual vacuum bagging material, like your tacky tapes, your spiral cords, and a vacuum pump, and do this. However, we're trying to do this as cheaply as possible. Carbon fiber and cheap don't really belong in the same sentence, but we're going to try and do that. We're also going to need, this is called peel ply. It's the material, it's basically it's like a nylon material impregnated with silicone. What do we know about silicone? Nothing sticks to it. So this is actually going to be our barrier layer. We're going to lay down our carbon and our resin, and then this is going to go over top of it because we have more things to go over top of that. And this is going to prevent everything from getting locked together. You'll be able to rip this off, and the carbon will stay, and all the stuff on top of it will come off. Stuff on top of it, this is a breather cloth. You can buy actual breather cloth from, say, Composite Envisions or Easy Composites. They sell it in rolls or, pieces. What this is once it's in a bag and you start pulling that vacuum, if you seal the bag around that vacuum port, you're not going to be pulling any air out from the rest of the bag. So what this does is it goes over top of that, and then you would place it in the bag so the vacuum port is over this. So as you're pulling the vacuum, it actually gives an area for it to pull air from, and it can squeeze the bag around the part. And basically squeezing the carbon fiber onto the part and holding it there while the resin cures. And then you can take it out and rip everything off. This also will absorb any excess resin, because you're gonna have more resin in there than you actually technically need, but that's because that's just the way it works. This is a wasteful thing, but it's what we do because it's fun. Now, as far as the resin goes, I am using Easy Composites thin epoxy resin number 1159. That is our resin. It's a thin resin. It's specifically made for things like wet layups and things that we're doing like this, lamination. And I'm using their 1160 hardener. It is a slow cure hardener, so this is going to take a while for it to actually cure. Quick tip, the faster hardener you use, the harder and stronger your stuff is actually going to be, but the less working time you have with it. I like using the slower cure because we still have to wait till tomorrow anyway, and this is going to give me a good amount of time to actually work with it and get it into the bag before it actually starts to gel over and go off. Plus it also helps for when I'm doing actual resin infusion. Sometimes, like a part like this, if I were to actually infuse a part about this size, it would probably, depending on the geometry, it would probably take roughly 20 minutes to a half an hour for it to actually pull the resin all the way through it. So that's giving me plenty of time to work with it using a slow hardener. Now, for this material, what I did was I actually laid tape around where I needed to cut it. That is going to help keep the ends from fraying up and lifting. and it's also supposed to help kind of keep it from distorting. It still does distort, but it's supposed to help with that. And if you go over your material and you find any spots, like see right here, you can see the weave isn't exactly perfect here. If you want to touch that up, just kind of like give everything a nice little gentle, like a move back and forth, just to get everything to the spacing to get back. Now's the time to do it, because once we get moving, we're going to lock everything into place. Now at this stage, we need to get our surface prepped and ready to actually get the carbon onto here. Now I found that plastic is probably one of the easier materials to get a lock onto, just because you can sand it really good, and you'll actually get a good mechanical lock. You need to sand it all up. I'm using, I think this is 80 grit. I'm going to give it a good nice scrub down with the 80 grit, and what that's going to do is going to put real deep sanding scratches in there. And that's going to give a real good mechanical lock for the resin to actually grab onto. We used a lighter paper on the panels because they were metal panels and they were painted. If we used the 80 grit, it wouldn't have actually made a difference. It would have just made more of a mess. But with the plastic, you can dig into the plastic, and what's underneath is just more plastic. So this is actually going to be just fine. You also want to make sure you get into these corners here, because you want to fold your stuff here and get into these corners, because corners are where carbon fiber does not like, especially edges like this. Carbon fibers, it's very stiff and rigid. If you were to put it over here and then just wrap it around the edge and say tape it on the inside, that could work, but it's also on this edge here and this edge here, it's going to lift away from. It can't just naturally go around a 90-degree turn like this. That's why we're using the vacuum bagging. The vacuum bagging is going to squeeze it around here, and it's going to keep it like that. So we've got to make sure to get all our corners and edges nice and good, nice and keyed up, so that way we get a good lock. Alright, you can see here, I've got it keyed up pretty good, nice and scratched up. I've got the resin mixed up. So it's going to start just like we did the last one. I'm just going to brush on a coat of this. You can use gel coat for this stage if you want to. Since this is a black piece of plastic, I don't find it necessary. Just some clear resin will do just fine. And there we are. Got the whole thing covered. Just a nice little coating, not enough to be, dripping all over the place. But now I'm going to leave that sit about an hour. We're going to let this wait till it gets sticky, and then we'll come back and we'll apply our carbon, our disposables, and toss it in the bag. Alright, we are now close enough to the B stage where we can continue on and we can put our carbon onto the part. Now I was wondering how I was going to do this, whether I wanted to lay it on the part, but I need to go under and over the edges. So what I did was I removed the plastic that I was using, cut a fresh clean one, and I laid it down. This is the side of the carbon that I want showing, and this is going to be the back side that's going to be against the part, and I'm going to lay the part down, and then I can fold everything over the way I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this up, like that, and I want the material, the weave, to be going this way. I'm just going to position this right in the center so we have enough to go up over the edges. Try and make sure that everything is straight, and that's where it's going to sit. Now we need to get these pieces of carbon up and over the edges, so that way when we go and put it in the bag, it'll squeeze it up against it nice and neatly. Okay, I've got some tape handy, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just rip some pieces off like this and just stick them to the edge of my work surface so that way I can grab them as I need them, because I'm going to need to hold the material in place while I tape the edges down. Alright, we'll start with that. I'm going to start with, let's see, because we're around these corners here, so it's going to come up this way and up this way. I don't know if I want a sharp edge or if I want to actually see if I can get it to bunch up, and so the weave will actually get tighter in the corner. So I think I would like a sharp edge, but I don't know if when we're going through to the bagging process, if it's going to actually hold that or not. So I'm just going to see what I can do. Being careful not to mess up the weave, of course. Like that. Alright, we might have to go with the sharp edge route. So now what I'm going to do is I've got this lifted up and over. I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm actually going to tape this down. Again, trying not to mess up the weave, which I did right here, and we're going to see that. You'll get to see that once it comes out of the bag. You'll see that. So you just want to be careful getting it up and over. See, they have these little things here. These that actually pop the thing into the case. And that's what's causing me to screw up the weave. I'm just going to snip that so I can get around it. There we go. That's better. That's much better. Same thing here. I'm going to snip that. That's the ticket. That's why we'll do it. Okay, there's that side. Now you can see it is loose. It's not really sticking very well. But that's what the vacuum bag gets to do. It's going to hold it all in. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, now the edges. Okay, I think I can actually bundle the corners together. So we're going to go with this. There we go. Look at that. Just like that. Down with that. I'm going to rock it. This corner is going to be a bit difficult because of the opening here. I don't want to just open up the weave. Okay, I think it'll be alright. Okay, and there we go. Now we've got our part completely wrapped in the carbon. Everything's going around the edges. You can see I went with the bunched up corners here. You see it's not bubbling up like that. Same with here, but that's okay because the vacuum bag is going to take care of all of that. So now what's next is going to be our peel ply. I'm going to do this the exact same way as I did the carbon, but we don't really have to be as precise with it because this is, like I said before, this is a disposable layer. You know what? I think I will tape it into place. I wasn't going to, but what's it gonna hurt? Okay, so what I did was I taped these sides a little bit, just here, because I didn't cut it wide enough. I cut it long enough, but not wide enough. And I'm not going to tape these down because when we start to, if I like say did it here, then this needs to squeeze in, and we're going to get what's called bridging, and it's not going to squeeze all the way in. So like you can see here, this needs to slide in order to pull tight. So I'm going to leave this just like this, and we'll let the bag pull this in and pull it tight on the thing. So next is our breather cloth, of course. So we can actually put this in later, but I'm still going to put it here like this. I'm going to wrap this whole thing in the breather cloth because of sharp, pointy things. These guys here, these are the things that I said they pop into the case and they secure this on. When we pull the vacuum into the bag pulls tight around them. They could, puncture the bag, and then you're going to get a vacuum leak, and it's not going to hold. So we're just going to leave that just like that, and I'm going to take another piece so that way we can move it towards the valve. Okay, here's our vacuum bag. I'm going to take our part, and I'm actually going to put it in like this, so that way the inside is facing downward. And I'll more on that, and I'll tell you the reason why in just a second. So I'm actually going to put this bag upside down, so that way I can put it in like this. In like that. And then I can flip it over. Just like that. There we go. Now you want this to be far enough away from this valve, because if it's right up against the valve, you'll see when this pulls in, it's going to pull in like this. So if you put the valve like right here, then everything's going to get scrunched together. And if you could say put this directly under the valve, but then you're coming close to this edge, and we just want to keep it right here in the center. Now you can see, since I decided to wrap it like that, there's no breather to the valve. So I just took take a piece of scrap like this, and I'm going to put it like this. I'm going to lift this up, slide that under, there we go. Now I've got something to breathe right here where the valve is. Close the bag. Make sure it is closed. I have sometimes seen these bags, they don't close. I'm like looking for a vacuum, like where is it, where is it? And it's because the bag's not sealed in one spot. Put this pump on. I'm going to start pulling the vacuum, but I want you to keep watch for something, for what I do here. And the bag's starting to collapse. As we're pulling this vacuum, I want to make sure that the top part of the bag actually goes under the thing, so that way we're squeezing it like that. So I'm just going to position it. Make sure to pull this, pull the bag in like this. Pull more vacuum. You can hear it starting to get tighter and tighter. I want to make sure that these corners get squeezed good, so that way that material stays in these corners. Make sure they're nice and tight. Pull some more. There we go. It's about as much vacuum as we're going to get. Just going to take this off so I can finagle more. Now let's look around. If you see on the bottom, you can see what I mean. See how the bag, it comes over the edge instead of just the whole bag squeezing together like this. It comes over the edge, so it's squeezing the material to the thing. And we're holding pretty good vacuum. And we've got our corners are nice and tight. So that way it'll stay nice and neat like that. And the only thing we have to do now is wait. Wait till tomorrow. So we'll wait till tomorrow, we'll unbag it, show you the result. Here we are, a day later. It is the following day. Everything should be nice and locked onto our plastic. Let's go ahead and open up this bag, take it out, and see what we got. Go. See here, we pulled up some of the excess resin. Over here too. That way, you know, there's an even amount of resin locking the fabric down. So now this should just tear off. Except for the two parts we taped. There we go. See how it just tears off? There we go, look at that. Looks good. See how we got into the corners nice and neatly in here? See, this is where the excess resin came out. We got a little bump right here. Oh, we got a little bridging right there. No big deal because... Actually, it is a big deal because that's the top. So we'll figure out a way of fixing that. But the rest of it, so far, is looking pretty good. All the edges are nice and neatly held down. Oh, look, the same thing happened here. Interesting. This right here, there's a handle underneath of here that you're supposed to be able to grab so you can pop the top of the case off. But this is looking pretty good so far. This is definitely looking really, really good. What we don't want to do right now is remove our tape and pull up our fabric, the excess fabric, because it's going to fray. And this here, it might be locked down. However, there are some spots where you might tug at the weave and distort it a little bit. We don't want to do that. So straight from this stage, we want to actually wet out the rest, wet this all out. We want to make sure that this carbon is completely saturated through, just so that way everything is completely locked into place. The fabric is locked onto the plastic. However, all these weaves are not 100% locked into place yet. That's why we're going to wet it out, just like we did in the last video, only this time there's no spots. It's not going to lift up. The resin underneath is completely hardened, and it's been impregnated in the very, very inside surface of the carbon, so it's not going to come off. I might put a little piece of peel ply right here and then clamp something in it in place to get this little spot to get held down. See if I can get a little closer and show you. See right here, maybe, you can't even really see it all that much, but you might see it, not right there, kind of like right here, you can kind of see it. But I might put a piece of peel ply on here after everything's wetted out and then clamp something flat on there to hold that down till the resin cures. And that way it'll be pushed in and it'll be level with all the rest of it. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up the resin and get moving on that. Alright, here is our first coat. You can see the fabric has just been wetted. We don't need a whole lot. There are going to be some drips because you can't, always avoid that. This here is just a piece of acrylic. Remember that piece that was sticking up? I put 2 coats of a mold release wax on this acrylic, and then I brushed it, and then I clamped that on there. So after this is fully cured, we can take that off, and we know that that's not going to move again because the resin's going to hold it into place. Now, one thing to note is, if you can see it, all along here, they're itty bitty teeny tiny little air bubbles. Now you can leave them if you want to. They probably won't cause too much of a problem because we're going to go over this layer with some red Scotch-Brite once it's fully cured. But a way to get rid of them, especially on following coats, is you can either use a heat gun or a blowtorch, like a propane torch. This is just one of those little torches that you can get. It's a chef's torch for like souffles and stuff like that. I think they're like $15 on Amazon, and they're just filled up with butane there on the bottom, and then you just go over it like that. Just a real quick swipe. It doesn't take much. All it needs is that little bitty bit of heat, and that breaks the surface tension on the bubbles, and you can see we are much, much cleaner without those bubbles now. So I'm going to let this fully cure, and then we'll come back and we'll finish that off, and then we'll start cutting that, and I'll show you how to trim all the rest of the stuff. Alright, we're back, and everything is nice and cured. We took care of the little thing here. This is actually the bottom one. You still feel a little bit there, but this is the bottom part you don't see. Up here, you can see we've got that taken care of. It's nice and smooth now. So what I've done so far is on the back side, I just pretty much trimmed it a little bit with some scissors, and then I'm going to actually go ahead and do some more fine tuning. All that's really needed, since it's only one single layer of carbon and hardly any resin, I'm just going to take a box cutter, and you basically just carefully run across like that. And if you're good with it, the blade should pretty much just follow the edge of the case. You know, unless you're like going like this or something that it's going to gouge into the case. Just go nicely, and it'll glide along the case, and it'll come right off. On the front, you can see I've started on the honeycombs. This is going to take a while because there's so many of them. But basically, you can either look at it from the front, and you can kind of see where the outline is, or you can go from behind, and you can kind of just like follow along like that. I'm just using a regular X-Acto knife, hobby knife. There we go. You look at it from the front, and it's not perfect. A little bit of sandpaper, a little bit more carving, and you can refine this up a lot better so it's right up against the edge there. So I got this off of the front grill part, and we're going to be back, and once this is all finished, and I'll show you how I'm going to get that on there, and then we'll start putting our next coats of resin on. Lots to do, lots to do. So this actually did not take as long as I thought it was going to once I got into the groove of it. And right here, you can see I cut around and I removed the carbon from here, and I got that Thermaltake logo off of the screen that used to be here, and I put it back onto here. So now this is going to be embedded into the resin, and it's going to look really, really nice once it's clear. All the rest of it, I gave it a quick scuff with a red Scotch-Brite just to give it a little bit extra to grab onto. And all of these other pieces, if you remember those panels from the last video that I kind of like messed up on, we're going to fix them. Plus also I mentioned that I was going to machine out these areas. This is the stuff that had the that honeycomb grill. So I machined out these nice big windows here, and I have some screen that's going to go in here. I'm going to paint that a metallic gray. It's going to look really nice for a contrast. And then the parts that actually came out, I'm going to clear those also because these are pretty nice panels. I can save these for something. I could probably cut them up, make them into drive covers or back plates or something decorative. So I'm also going to be putting a coat of resin on them as well. But that's pretty much it. I'm just going to take my chip brush, and we're going to do just as we did before. We're going to just take some resin on the brush, not too much. We're just going to brush it on. And if you noticed, see the tape that I put around the border of everything? I don't want the resin is ultimately going to drip over the edge, and if I didn't have this tape here, it would have dripped over the edge and then underneath, and I didn't want to have to sand, repaint, and clear the underside, so I put this tape on here, so that when the resin does drip over, it'll stop on this tape, and then before the resin gets hard, I can go ahead and take the tape off, and it won't be dripping over the edge, and it'll stay right there. So that's the story with that. It's just a little tip I picked up, along the way, because I got tired of things dripping all the time and having to clean it all up. So I'm just going to continue on with, I'm going to probably put 2 coats on, and then we are going to go ahead and sand and polish. And it's going to look a lot better than the clear coat did, because we are not going to mess it up this time with the resin. It's a lot thicker. Alright, everything here has its first coat. Everything that is on this table will be receiving at least 1 more coat. This piece here was probably going to be getting 3 more coats instead of 2 or 3 more coats, depending on how thick I need it to get. You can still see like the texture of the carbon sticking up through the resin. It's not thick enough yet. This piece here also needs more. Gonna need 1 coat on everything. That'll smooth out all of this stuff. And I actually might wait till when this actually, I have found that once this stuff starts to go off, since I'm using a slow curing part, this will actually, in about an hour, hour and a half, be still liquid, but it'll be thick enough so that it'll actually stay like vertical. So I could actually use that on parts like this, so you can still see the texture of the carbon. So that'll actually put a nice thick layer on here, and it'll actually stick. So it's probably what I'm going to do. Same thing with this over here. This is a gauge cluster that I'm working on for somebody. It's going to need 1 more coat, and I actually did that with this. The first coat that I put on, I did this here, and I kind of like laid it up like this so that it was like flat. And then once the resin got to that point, I put a nice thick layer on, and it looked really good. It just needed some more like here in these corners and up over there. So I'm probably going to do the exact same thing. That'll get rid of a lot of these brush strokes too. This stuff should self-level itself out. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to put some more on there. So once I get all the resin on these, I will come back and I'll show you what we got. Alright, I have got on here as many layers as I'm going to put on here. Let me show you how it looks. These scrap ones here look really good, except for right here and here. If I ever end up using these things for something, I'll correct that. It was just a little bit of surface tension right there, and as the stuff cured, it just spread a little bit. I could have just gone over this with my finger and broke the surface tension. That wouldn't have been there, but these are also just scrap things, so that's no big deal. Here's the other one. This one turned out pretty good. You can see there's some dust in it from this place. There's a finger mark. See, it holds fingerprints pretty good, but it is nice and shiny and smooth. The panels that I fixed, I removed. There's the section that I removed, and you can see here that's another part there and there. Other than that, there's some dust. We can smooth this over with some wet sanding and then polishing, which is what we're going to do. Here's the top, here's the front panel. Looks pretty good. I don't see any of those surface tension marks, but I do. Oh wait, nope, there's one. But there is a good amount of dust trapped in it, and I'm going to get that out. So up here, you still see there is the texture of the folded over carbon. This is as best as I'm going to get without putting, probably another like 3 more layers on here. But with such a compound bend, the carbon didn't just have to fold over, it had to fold over and then shrink. You can see the weave as it comes in here, it starts to actually pull together. So using vacuum bags and this much of a compound bend, this is about as best as you're going to get. Over here you can see it even better there. But still, it still looks amazing. All I got to do is a little bit of wet sanding and then some polish. It'll be good. On the back, we have all these heavy drips. These, especially on plastic parts, I like to just take a pair of flush cutters or dikes and just snip off as much as I can. And then the rest, we'll hit this with 80 grit. 80 grit will knock this down really fast. So that way we get it all nice and flat, and it'll fit back on the case nice and good. And you can see this does look good, but there we go, there's the angle. You can see a little bit of dust trapped in here. We're going to fix this. We're going to wet sand with 800, because that's all we need. We're not looking to flat it out. We're just looking to clean up all the dust bumps. In the last videos, I showed you using 400 grit on the clear coat. That was wrong. I got that mixed up. If I were to want to wet sand this and flat it out for polishing, I would sand this with 400, and the clear coat would get 600. 400 is way too aggressive for clear coat, but this stuff, since it's so thick and hard, 400 would knock it down really quick. Now on this one, you can see, remember those spots? You can see like a little haze right here. That's from where I didn't sand off all of the clear coat, so you can see through it. But either way, it still looks cool. I like it. I'm digging it. So I'm going to get to sanding this, and then we'll put the case back together, and we'll show you how it looks completely finished. So I used a test panel, and I used wet 1000 grit, and you can see that all the dust used to be right here. Now it's all nice and smooth. You can't feel it anymore. So I'm going to go over all these pieces with wet 1000 grit paper to knock off all the little dust nibs, and then we'll proceed with 12, 15, 2000, and then some polish. And here we are, about 4 months later. I got a little backed up with customer work, so I'm all caught up on that now to get back on these projects. But here's the front panel. This is how it turned out. I think it turned out really good. This got wet sanded to 1600 grit, and then I went over it with some 3M polish, the yellow bottle. That cleans up to 1200 grit sanding scratches, so it turns out really good. You can see it's very reflective and smooth, and I think it turned out great. You can see over here, it's a little bit, orange peely or lumpy, I guess you can call it. Doing edges like this is always going to be a little bit difficult because the thing sits like this. So the stuff wants to run down the edge, so it's always going to be thinner on edges. What I could have done was could have set it up like this, then just done this side, let that dry, put it over this side, did the same thing. But I think overall this looks good. So is it perfect? No, but that's not the purpose of this video or this series. It's about showing, different ideas, getting different ideas on things, stuff that you can do. Also, what I've done in the meantime is these side panels here, I did redo them again. I fixed them, so all those little hazy marks, they're no longer here, they're gone. You can actually see that the carbon is, if you can get to focus, there we go. It's very much a lot more even. It's straight across, there's no waves or anything like that. So that does make this the 4th layer of carbon. So it is pretty thick, and you're going to see that once it's on the case and everything is together. And this is just some gray nylon window screen that you can get at a hardware store, or you can go onto a website specific for PC modding. You buy it as modder's mesh. You get like a piece this size for like $10, or you can get a roll of like 20 feet of this stuff for $15 at a hardware store. So there's a little tip for you. But I think it looks good. It looks good. It's got a nice gray color to it. Adds to the black. I think it's a nice little contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and put these panels back on the case, and I'll give you an overall overview of what it looks like. And there we go. The whole case put together. You can see, like right here, how much thicker it is now. So I believe there's about 4 layers of carbon on here, plus you add the resin. It's going to add a lot of thickness. All the panels are like that because of all the layers. But overall, I like the way that this turned out. It's very shiny, very reflective. You can see there's a clear mirror image coming off of the finish. You can see everything. You can even see all the little details. All the fibers from this towel, you can actually see them in the reflection. So it turned out really, really good. Just sanding and polishing, and it looks amazing. The front, other than the surface defects, I think also turned out really good. I like this, the window screen in here, the gray against the black. I think that looks really good. It also gave a little bit of a depth because now you have a place for your vision to actually stop. And then once computer components go in here and lights get turned on, it'll look even better. And here's another little shot of reflection. It looks amazing. I love how this turned out, and I can't wait to get working on the next one. But as far as the next carbon fiber project is concerned, I'm going to start going over how to make molds. That'll be in the next one. I want to say next week, but if you guys have been watching for any decent amount of time, you'll know my track record. Next week could be next month. But if you're interested in learning more about this, we're going to be doing molding and then vacuum infusion and also wet layups. So stay tuned, and I will see everybody in the next one. Then out.